My name is Daniel, and I'm from a small village in southeastern Nigeria, a place where the Niger River cradles the land like a mother holding her child. Our village, Ogwugwu, is peaceful, known for its lush farmlands, sprawling mango trees, and the steady rhythm of life dictated by the rise and fall of the river. Life here is simple, and stories, both old and new, are woven into the fabric of our everyday lives. I used to think these stories were just that, stories, until one fateful night when I came face to face with the ghost of the river. It was a warm evening during the dry season, the kind of night where the moon shines so brightly that it casts silver streaks on the river's surface. I had been staying with my uncle, Pa Ease, for the past few weeks to help him on his farm. He was aging, and I didn't mind taking a break from the city to lend a hand. One evening after dinner, my uncle leaned back in his wooden chair and lit his pipe. The air smelled of tobacco and the lingering aroma of roasted plantains. "Daniel," he began, "you've heard about the woman on the river, haven't you?" I chuckled, thinking he was about to tell one of his legendary tales. "Uncle, not this again. The woman on the river? Isn't that just a story to scare children?" His eyes narrowed and his voice dropped. "It's no story. People who see her don't laugh. They regret it." He tapped his pipe against the chair's armrest. "She's always there, on nights like this. If you doubt me, take a walk down to the old dock." I shrugged it off, but his words lingered. Later that night, unable to sleep, I decided to prove him wrong. The moon hung high in the sky as I made my way to the riverbank. The path was quiet, save for the chirping of crickets and the occasional croak of frogs. When I reached the dock, I saw nothing unusual, just the river glistening under the moonlight. The old wooden dock creaked as I stepped onto it, the planks worn smooth by years of use. I sat down, letting my feet dangle above the water. The air was cool, and for a while I felt at peace. Then I heard it, a faint humming, like a song carried on the breeze. I froze, straining to listen. The sound grew louder, melodic yet mournful, and it seemed to be coming from the water itself. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice trembling. At first, there was no response. Then from the corner of my eye, I saw her. She was standing on the far side of the riverbank, her figure shrouded in white. Her hair was long, cascading down her back, and her arms were outstretched as if beckoning me. My heart pounded. I wanted to run, but my legs refused to move. She began to walk across the water, her bare feet skimming the surface as if it were solid ground. As she drew closer, I noticed her face. It was beautiful, yet haunting. Her eyes filled with an unspeakable sadness. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice soft but echoing as though it came from all around me. I was curious," I stammered. She tilted her head, studying me. "Do you know what happened here?" I shook my head, unable to speak. "This was my home," she said, gesturing toward the river. "I was once like you, young, curious, full of life. But they took it all away." She began to recount her story, her voice heavy with sorrow. Her name was Adanna, and she had lived in Ogwugwu many years ago. She was betrothed to a wealthy trader from a neighboring village, a match arranged by her family. But Adanna loved another, a fisherman named Obinna, who often sang to her from his canoe as he cast his nets. One night, as she and Obinna planned their escape, her betrothed found out. Enraged, he gathered his men and ambushed them by the river. Obinna was beaten and left for dead, and Adanna was dragged into a canoe. When she resisted, they drowned her in the river. Her body was never found, and her spirit was said to haunt the waters, searching for justice. By the time she finished, tears streamed down my face. Her pain was palpable, her grief overwhelming. "What can I do?" I asked, desperate to help. She looked at me with a mixture of hope and despair. "Tell my story. Let them remember me. Only then can I find peace." As the first light of dawn broke, Adanna began to fade. "Thank you," she whispered before disappearing into the mist. I stumbled back to my uncle's house, shaken to my core. When I told him what had happened, he nodded solemnly. "You've been chosen to carry her story," he said. Do not take it lightly. Since that night, I've shared Adanna's tale with anyone who would listen. Some believe me, others don't. But I know what I saw, and I'll never forget the sadness in her eyes. The river still holds her spirit, and on moonlit nights, if you listen closely, you might hear her song.